We'll now discuss the conditional if-then statement. Let's take a look at this piece of code. You might like to copy it and paste it in, or you might just like to type it into an Excel VBA window. So as usual, we'll put a button on the spreadsheet and double click on it to get the code up, and I'll reduce this window down a little, and then in here I can put the code that I just copied. So let me just take the design off, and by clicking the design button at the top of the VBA, and then when I do that I can then run my code, might as well, and just okay, so it puts the word yes in there. Let's see how that works. Well, first of all, we dim obviously our integer, then we put it equal to the value of 2. Now this is the important thing. If it has the value of 2, then do whatever. So in this case it puts the word yes in the top left cell, that is to say A1. What if I were to give I another value, for example I equals 3 or whatever, something different from 2. Now let me just delete the yes, and if I now click the command button, you'll see that absolutely nothing happens. We can put this if then on more than one line, so let me just return that to 2 for the moment, and then watch me carefully as I click here and then press the enter key and then come beneath that and type end if. Incidentally, if you just type one word, it very carefully corrects it for you, which is rather nice, to separate it into two words. So does this do the same thing? Let's find out. Click the button. Yes, it does do the same thing. Let me just show you the previous statement that we had. These two are absolutely identical. So let me just get rid of that for the moment. Then you might ask, well, why would we bother putting it on more than one line? Well, the answer is that we call this a block of code, so we can, within that block, we could actually have another statement. So let me just delete that to make sure, and then if I now run this, you'll see both of those things are executed. So in cell 1.1 we put the word yes, and in the cells 1.2 we put the words of course. So that's the idea of an if then and end if block. Now another reason for splitting up the if and end if is to put in another, is to use an else. So let's see how that works. So if I equals 2, then these two lines will be executed. Else, so if I is 3, for example, we should execute this line. Well, let's just see if it's working as it was before. So I'll delete this, and then I'll run the code just to make sure that the first bit is working. Yeah, so that's fine. But if I now delete that and then I change this to something else, I equals 3, for example, I could put the I equals 3 here if you like, leave that one as 2. But if I run that, now you see the else is performed. That is to say, sorry is placed in cells 2, 1. Let me just set that out a little better perhaps, and then I'll press the tab key here to indent the code. What I'll do is use a breakpoint this time. So first of all, I'm going to clean up, and then I'll put a breakpoint, shall we say, here, and then I'll run the code. Now let's see what happens here. If I press the F8 key, what will it do? If I equals 2, then it will bypass that because I's got the value 3, and then it will come to this line here and print out the word sorry in cell A2. So let me just take the breakpoint off and stop that. Now in summary then, we've got the if then single line statement, which is in this form here, but the alternative is to use the if and end if block. But do notice one thing, that in both cases the if and the then are on the same line. So for example, in the single statement we've got if and then, and in the block statement we've got if and then, always on the same line. It's a little bit tricky to remember sometimes, so you might refer back. I'll talk now about a practical application of the if. We'll talk about sorting some numbers, well, only two numbers. So if I'd like to sort those two numbers in ascending order, then we could, I'll just use the shift key to demonstrate and put that there. So those two numbers are sorted in ascending order. So okay, I'll just put them back so that they're not sorted. We can break this down into two steps. We could check to see if they need sorting, which they do in this case, and then if they do, then we need to swap them. Let's just do the first stage first to determine. So if I click the button, it's going to tell me the second cell is smaller and it needs sorting. But if the first one is, then if I click it now, then nothing will happen. Okay, so if you'd like to just pause the video and try that yourself. So the idea is that if the second one is smaller, then we want a message box. So your code might look something like this. You might like to put this all on one line, etc. But since we could probably think that we're going to do something else within that if, so that we could therefore make it a block. You might like to dim some variables up here as well, and also and then put them equal to the cells 2, 1. And incidentally, if you want to put two statements on the same line, then we could use this colon notation. It's probably not a good idea because debugging, you'd like to see line by line, but sometimes it's nice to set your values out so that we can replace that by X and this by Y, and then run the code and that should work as before. You might ask why I'm doing that, putting X and Y in there, but I'm looking ahead really, because ultimately I'm going to be able to I'm going to swap the two values, which I'll talk about now. So what I'll do is I'll comment that code and just drag it out. I might reuse some of it later. So for the moment, let's see if we can recall how we just swapped two values. We did that previously using the range. I would like you to use the cells notation, please. If you'd like to try that yourself, write code using the cells notation in order to just swap those two values, A1 and A2. So pause that video and just give that a try. So your code might look something like this. Now, so that means if we just check that that's working. So if I click the command button, then it just swaps the 3 and the 2, as we can see. So that's working fine. You might like to have used two variables, X and Y, for example, in there, but that's either way, that swaps them. Now, what we need to do now is only swap them if this one on the bottom is smaller. So in this case, it wouldn't swap them, but in this case, it would swap them. So you could think about, please, how to do that. You can write the code, and so we can pause the video and I'll show you how to do it later. So what we need to do is to enclose this whole thing in an if block. And we actually might, I was thinking of indenting that, but perhaps not. But yeah, okay. But and by the way, if you want to indent, or let's put it back again by Shift Tab, which is rather nice because sometimes that would result in deleting it. So once again, to tab a whole block, we can highlight it, press the Tab key, and Shift Tab will take it back again. So just make sure that's working. We click the button. Then you can see that they're swapped. But if the bigger, this one is the bigger, they're swapped. So if that were bigger, then we click our button and that should swap them. So there are a practical application of the if. Obviously, we could use the same technique to sort a lot more numbers.